Hi guys, my name's James, welcome to Distant Vale, and today Harry is going to be painting some Rebel Troopers from the Atomic Mass Games Star Wars Legion core set. Now this core set was released in 2018, it's still going strong. There's going to be some new army sets towards the end of this year, about Q3, but Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, which is where these Endor troopers were modelled from, released in 1983, I believe, and now we're over 40 years later, and this aesthetic's still really strong. So I hope you enjoy Harry taking you through how to paint one of these Rebel troopers.
Right, today we're going to start from a zenithal base. Now this is going to give us a nice bit of highlighting to work from as we move through with some of the lighter colors we're working with today. And the lovely thing about working with that zenithal is it does make the visually actually reading that model early on a lot easier, and you can almost see where those final highlights are going to end up. Now the first color we're going to be putting on is some sharp bone, or a lovely warm pale khaki, and I'll be using this as a base color for the undershirt on this model. Now we're going to be building this up into a dirty white later on, but all we're after here is just some nice coverage and make sure we've got a good strong color underneath. Now you're going to see here we're moving on to the skin. I seem to have lost the footage from me painting the pants, but it's just a khaki color building up a few thin layers there. Now with the skin, I'm going for a bit of a sci-fi sort of skin tone here, so I'm going to be using a very pale purple, and I'll be building this up with some normal skin tones over the top later on. Jumping back to the clothing, I want to do a nice strong green undercoat for the jacket. So we've got this dark green here from the Model Air color range. Now this is why that zenithal undercoat is going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting here. These sort of air paints are very, very thin and translucent, so it's going to show through very strongly. And even with this base color here, we're wanting to allow some of that pre-shading to show through. Right, now they've got the jacket and the hat on this model done, we're going to move on to painting the leathers. Now there are quite a few leather straps and pouches on this model, so I'm going for two different browns here. One is a darker brown, using the Rhinox hide from Citadel, and the other being a bit paler, being the Mournfang brown. And there's no real right way to go with either one of these. I'm using the darker brown here on the belt and strap, and the warmer brown more for boot, bags, and leather pouches. The main reason I've chosen both of these here is that they stand out from each other quite nicely without clashing too much in terms of the actual hues being chosen. They're both in that warm color spectrum, so they're not going to be as jarring from a distance, while still remaining distinct on the model. And here you can see that sort of differential shading shows up quite nicely on that model there, and helps to break the model up a little bit. We're now going to move on to painting the metal components, and I'm going to be using this Eshin Grey from Citadel Paints, and it's a bluey grey, and I find that it looks quite good as that base color, and we'll highlight that up to something quite bright. But also not neglecting to go through and hit the goggles and the buckles and a few of the other small pieces of metal around the model.
Hello, it's me again. If you've got this far, thank you so much for watching, really appreciate it. If you don't mind hitting like and subscribe or drop a comment below, it'd be awesome, makes it much more worthwhile for us and makes us realise that some of the content we're doing is actually okay. This video is made possible by the models from Atomic Mass Games, provided by Let's Play Games Distribution in Australia and New Zealand. They've come up with a new idea, and it's basically a website that helps you find your local hobby store. And there's a website for New Zealand and a website for Australia. There's a link to the New Zealand site in the comments below, and it's just designed so that if you've moved to a new area or if you want to support your local hobby store, you know which one's closest to you. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video.
And with that, the base coating is done for all the major colors on the model. Now we're just going to add a bit of a shade to reintroduce some of that definition. I'm going to be using Strong Tone from Army Painter and adding a couple of drops of Flow Improver to, again, break that surface tension and just help that wash really spread out nice and thinly into those cracks, crevices, recesses, and details. Now, it will leave a bit of a shine. This will be fixed up later on with a matte varnish. But for now, we're just going to have to enjoy the shine and glisten on this model. Right, now we're just going to start to reintroduce some of those original colors back onto the model, using the colors we already have here on the wet palette to cover over the majority of the areas we've shaded here, just leaving those deeper areas of recess dark from the wash. The only time we're going to be doing anything different to this is on the face. With the face, we're going to be coming in with a more standard flesh tone and starting to build up the colors from there, because I'm wanting the purple to be a lot darker in those recesses rather than on the higher points. So I'm introducing just some Kislev Flesh from Citadel. It's a nice pale flesh tone color. And I'm just going to start building up some highlights. And you're going to see later on I'm going to start to also tint the facial here with a dark mix of Royal Purple from Model Color by Vallejo, and some of the Rhinox Hide sort of dark warm brown that I already have on the palette here. And with the face mostly done at this point, we're going to start introducing our second highlight on the rest of the model. So we start off with the pants, and I already have the highlight color on the palette. And that's our Sharp Bone. We use that for the shirt. It's just a paler khaki color. And we're just going to go over those higher creases in the pants. Now for the shirt, I'm going to add in an even paler khaki. We're going to be using that Screaming Skull from Citadel Paints. And again, we're looking for that dirty t-shirt look. For the coat, I'm going to be introducing a slightly more yellow, weathered looking green, and this is going to be the Goblin Green from Vallejo. Now, because this is an air color, it means it's going to be relatively translucent and thin, because it's meant to be run through an airbrush. And this is helpful for a little bit of blending on this model, in that we can take bigger areas with one thin coat and then coming a little bit lower down, applying another one, and gently building up colors step by step along those bigger areas of fabric. The upside, it gives you more control, with the downside being that it takes far more layers to get a nice consistent coloring. And just to finish off the sort of more weathered look, I've added a little bit of the Screaming Skull into the green to pale it up a little bit. And with that, the jacket is done with a nice little bit of wearing around the edges of the fabric. The next thing we're going to be highlighting up is the metals. So we're just going to take that grey up a knot. We'll be using a paler grey, the Dawnstone from Citadel Paints. And with this, we want to be focusing much more on the edges, with only a little bit of this highlight coming onto the broader, flat-facing areas of the metal components. This is just to make that highlight look a little bit sharper. The next highlight up on the metal is going to be an Administratum Grey. Again, a very pale grey here. And again, really just trying to hit those most upward facing corners and edges along the metal. It shouldn't take us too long. Coming on to the next highlights, this will be on the leathers. So nice pale brown. Again, staying in that warm family of browns, and just going along those raised edges, but also the areas of the leather that would be a little bit more worn to give it that nice faded aged leather look. And with the more pale leathers done, we're moving on to the darker ones, using mahogany from Vallejo and flesh from the Army Painter. We're just going to mix those two up to make a nice pale brown here that has a little bit of a thicker consistency than the air paints would normally have. And we're just going to use this to, again, hit those edges. And in my mind, this darker leather is a little bit tougher, so we can afford to be a little bit sharper on the highlights, being a little bit more restrained and only hitting the edges rather than the wider areas. And with that, the model is finished. All it needs now is a coat of varnish and a bit of basing. Thanks for coming along and painting along with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to seeing you at the next one.